Welcome back to episode 38 of the Grappling Growth podcast with me, Joe Testori. On today's podcast, I was fortunate enough to have a family friend of mine, Harry the Piano, or Harry Harris. Harry and I have known each other for probably about 12 years now. And funnily enough, we did some work with each other about 5 or 6 years ago with regards to his website and his social media. Harry is by trade a pianist, as his name suggests, and he is one of the most creative minds I've ever met. Not only is he massively creative, he is super intellectual. He knows things that I just think, how on earth does this guy know this stuff? We delve into how you can go and book a few gigs as a creative professional. We also talk about the fact that he's taken 65 flights over the past year and how he essentially never really burns out from his profession and how he absolutely has an unrivaled amount of passion and love for music and piano. Thank you for tuning in to the Grappling Growth podcast. If you enjoy this, please like it, share it, subscribe on all digital platforms. Take care. As entrepreneurs, we all experience challenges in our business journey. I'm Joe Testori, and the Grappling Growth podcast is my attempt at documenting my entrepreneurial journey while building my brands. I sit down with fellow entrepreneurs, understanding how they grapple with growth. I hope you find value and enjoy. Harry, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Oh, very happy to be here, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Most welcome. Harry, my first question is, what does growth look like to you?
So, I've got a slightly complicated career, and I've got about probably half a dozen different areas of doing, which is private performing and public performing, then touring, doing workshops around schools and colleges and stuff like that, broadcasting and composing. So there's not a kind of steady growth or decline model really for me. It's because in one area can be absolutely booming and then something else can drop away. So the idea for me is keeping all the plates spinning and hopefully all of them going in a northerly direction, of course, which indicates growth. But it's like after when I came out of the pandemic, obviously everything was decimated. So I just had to sort of put all my eggs into one basket, and the only thing that was on offer there was sort of doing jobs on ships, doing shows on cruise ships. And I never really want to be away as too much, but I was forced to sort of do 30 weeks a year on tour, which is quite tough when you're used to having a family life and being around and that. But growth really is just, for me, is sort of keeping all those plates spinning and trying to progress each one and rationing my time so that I give everyone equal attention, because they're all sort of equal parts of my income, if that makes sense.
And a lot of people, when they talk about business and growth, they take more of an approach of take a singular focus or maybe split their focus amongst two areas. Why for you, and maybe because you're in the creative space, why is it important to be looking at all of these plates spinning at the same time?
Partly for my own, you have to be in a happy place if you're going to advance your prospects and your business, don't you? And all of those things that I mentioned, I know it seems like probably a ridiculous amount of ways to split your focus, but all of those things are things that bring me joy. I mean, I love broadcasting. I love doing the lectures at schools. I love doing the improvisation workshops, and I love touring. So it makes me sort of feel more happy and productive if I'm doing all of those things. So it's not really something that I sort of set out to do, but it's just the way my career has sort of transpired, and I love those things. And the variety keeps me fresh. It's one of the things that people always say about my shows, are that like some people sort of have their 45 minutes or 1 hour's material and they repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. But because my shows are largely improvised and work from audience suggestions, then it's always fresh. And that's sort of my whole persona is based around doing different stuff all the time. So actually, the more things I'm doing, the happier I am, which I know is probably counterintuitive to someone like yourself with a very sort of set business model. But it's just a different approach, really.
And how many years have you been a full-time musician for?
Well, I graduated in 1985. So since then, I mean, since 21, so just under years. 40 years. Yeah.
And yeah. So I hope the 40th anniversary is coming around the corner.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
You mentioned the point about variety and feeling fresh.
Yeah.
40 years is a long time for any career.
It is.
Have you had moments where you felt burnt out or you felt like quitting?
Do you know what? I suppose, well, most people would answer that question by saying they started off with this surge of energy and in a kind of ambition, and as life progresses, as careers progress, there are sort of moments as when you're further into it, you've been doing it a long time. But really, it's completely the opposite for me, because I started off, I always knew that I could like earn a living from playing the piano. And of course, you start off doing it in hotels and bars. And I got really lucky early on. I got given a gig in the Groucho Club, which is like a big celeb place in Soho. And from that, within a couple of years, I was like was a resident piano player on 2 TV shows and doing loads of radio broadcasts. So it was but I had this sort of slow start initially of like just playing in bars and hotels, and I was bored witless, to be honest with you. So there were many times when I was just sort of, I was living in a shared house at the time, and all my colleagues and people living there, housemates, would sort of go off early in the morning, and my day wouldn't start till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I was going to play in a hotel and then doing a gig in the evening. And I thought, like, I'm wasting my life just sitting in a corner playing the piano. No one's listening, no one cares. But you just have to really focus and say, okay, this is part of the entertainment industry. Use this time to get yourself together, practice, learn stuff, learn new songs, learn how to play things in different keys, all that kind of malarkey. And that was the only time I really felt like quitting. But thereafter, it's been consistently exciting. And like I said to you, I love the variety, and that's what sort of gets me up on a Monday morning. It's like I look at my week and I think I love all the stuff that I'm doing. So that's those times, to answer your question. Sorry, a bit long-winded, but those times sort of came early in the career, and ever since then, no, not now. I mean, I embrace every new challenge, and I love it as much now as I did 30 years ago. And I will never retire. I'll keep on doing it because I'm that luckiest of people, which is that actually love what they do. It's not just a means to earn money to me. It's actually something raison d'etre as part of what I am.
I think there's so much to unpack there. You've spoken firstly about essentially not being in a place where you felt as though variety is the essence there, but loving
Yeah.
what you do. So, on the first point about variety, and I think what I'm trying to get to is not many creatives are going to be listening to this podcast, but it's going to be more relevant to them than an entrepreneur. And in turn, you're a musician first and then a businessman second, I think would be fair to say.
Yes, but you have to. I mean, there are certain elements of entrepreneurial, nature to what I'm doing, because I was asked. I remember like when the first lecture, I'd never done any lecturing at all, and somebody asked me to go and do it at a school, and I was nervous about it, obviously, because I've not done this before, and you're suddenly facing 216, 17-year-olds. You can imagine it's somewhat intimidating. Um, and I said to the guy just before I started, he said, "No, you'll be fine. You should play some piano and talk to them about your career and how it all built up, and how you sort of got into various things of playing with celebrities and working on these shows." And he said, "Anyway, it's early in the series. You're lecturer number 2, so they'll still be full of energy and up for it." And I said, "Oh, who was the first guy?" He said, "Buzz Aldrin." So I'm following someone who's walked on the moon. That's now nearly fled for the hills hearing that. But then once that had sort of gone well, then I sort of realised the potential of that and started rolling it out I made this huge list of 500 schools that had good music departments, and wrote off to all of them and made a brochure. And I'm now invited to sort of lecture and give workshops and do shows in over 50 schools, and some of them on a regular basis. So that's become quite a big element. So there's an entrepreneurial sort of side to that within. You have to find what your USP is, what makes you unique, because people just sort of go to university and master their craft, and whatever it is, music, drama, dance, videography, whatever it is, any of those kind of artistic professions, and then expect sort of jobs to land in their lap. You have to be entrepreneurial in the arts. You have to find out what your thing is and what separates your CV from other people's CVs to advance your business. And just harking back to something you said quickly, you're talking about this is going to be more relevant to creatives rather than people who are kind of entrepreneurial business people. I would argue there that kind of like that kind of one job for life, it doesn't exist in the way that it quite used to, and quite a lot of people have career changes now. So they find themselves in a position where they're in the gig economy, which is not to say they're on their uppers or anything, but they have an element of being self-employed rather than being PAYE and working in that way. So a lot of these kind of principles, of artistic principles that we've been doing for years as creatives, are now applying more in the kind of business field as well. So there is some degree of relevance to your audience as well, hopefully, Joe.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a massive shift into the gig economy for a lot of people. And I
Yeah.
think there was a stat that I read that like 93% of Gen Zs want
Yeah,
to run their own business, but then we know that within 5 years, 90% of businesses fail. So there's a bit of a disequilibrium
yeah.
there with people. And you mentioned your unique selling point. Can you just kind of delve into what that is? Because I know what it is, and we worked together a couple of years ago, and
Yeah.
you've done some fantastic musical work. But tracing back the roots, there was once upon a time when you didn't have a unique selling point. So how did you go about finding that?
Well, it's not so much. I mean, always had. So basically, I should explain really what it is that makes me different to other musicians. In as much as I'm an improviser, and there's lots of improvisers around, and people sort of hear the word improviser and they think like like jazz or sort of rock guitar solos or whatever that might be. But I'm in a slightly different vein. In my shows, I will say to the audience, you can ask me for any song you like, and it could be a pop song or a film score, or a classical thing or a jazz thing or a musical theatre, whatever it might be. But then you can change the style. So you could say, play Coronation Street, but make it sound like Stevie Wonder or a tango or Rachmaninoff or ragtime. And I do that on the hoof, which is like very unusual. So that's when I'm doing shows and sort of private parties and that's the skill that I'm known for. And I was always able to do that to some extent, but it was working out how to monetize that, how to put it in a format that was, how it worked best with a live audience. Am I going to get them to tweet in and put it on a screen behind me? Am I just going to get them? Ultimately, it's just old school retro, just get people to shout stuff out and sort of write it down and then put all the requests together in a medley. And I've just got a commission from Classic FM to do a new series of that starting in January on their TikTok account, which I'm looking forward to. And that's kind of spread into all my work, teaching students how to improvise, doing shows on ships, doing shows in theatres, doing private parties, and touring with people. Like over the years, I toured with people like Rick Astley and with Alexander Armstrong from Pointless, and done sort of sessions for lots of pop bands and Abbey Road sessions as a session musician, but it all stems from that ability to improvise. So that's my USP. It wasn't discovering it, it was just discovering how to monetize it and make it
Mm-hmm.
viable. That was the sort of focus of my career.
And because that is essentially, that's a big element of marketing. And you spoke about going around
Absolutely.
to 500 schools and putting brochures through,
Yeah.
essentially reaching out to them. That's essentially cold outreach, one of the cornerstones of growing a business. But then also mentioning that you turn around, you had to refine the messaging, you had to figure out what is actually going to resonate with the audience and
Absolutely.
how do you package it. So that's
Yes.
actually really cool, because I think a lot of people just see that as well. I just came across it, but I assume that a lot of it just came from being present, doing shows, and then figuring out, oh, tweeting in doesn't work, but this, just going back to the old school, write it down and put a medley together,
Yeah,
works best.
that's in live shows. Yeah, but the schools thing. I mean, you say it's cold calling, and of course I understand what you mean, and in some ways it is. But it was targeted cold calling. I mean, I'm not sending out 10,000 mail shot. You know what I mean? And the reason it took me years to put this spreadsheet together of all these things, because when GDPR came in, you can't grab a list from somewhere, and it was a very targeted, and it was like schools with really strong music departments that might be interested in what I had to sell. So I had to painstakingly go through various brochures and websites over years and concoct this list, which was that's the targeting that I was doing. So and it's just kind of identifying, how will this product be something that they will pay me for. And it's the schools thing is very lucrative, because all of these private schools have huge budgets, and they have special budgets for specialist events like that, and they all have big theatres. They're very, very well sort of financed and great facilities. So I'll go in for a day and do a few workshops for sort of the talented musicians there, and then do a show in the evening. And I always I realised over the years that kind of it's up to me to play my part in their finances as well. I can't just be the person who's taking money off them for the service. What I have to sort of say to them is like, look, do your own marketing, get some of the, open it up to the public. You've got this fantastic theatre that seats 400 people, invite all, put posters up, you've got all these kids with parents, get the parents, relatives, come along to the show and charge for tickets. Don't make it a free event, because that means people undervalue it when it's free.
Yeah.
They'll say, oh, I'll come, and then they don't show up. So, charge 5, 10, 15 for a ticket. And then the first few schools that started doing that, they were making a profit. They were absolutely kind of, this is amazing. because I do have something of a reputation for doing shows from radio and the bits and pieces like that. So quite often there's this element of parents that will have heard of what I'm doing, so they will pay for tickets and they will come. We had audiences quite a few times, like 300 or 400 people. With obviously the students don't pay, the kids don't pay, but the parents will, and you can cover a quite substantial fee from doing that. Plus, they've got all their finances anyway, so they're very happy with that. So that's my kind of business angle, is always looking to, like, make it, provide your client with more than just a kind of primary service. This is one of the things I always say to students who are starting to do things in the arts, like, take more away from any gig than just the fee. Go in there and look around you and say, if there's a particularly good florist or a good marquee or other good entertainers or a great videographer or a good speaker or anyone, a good MC, get their cards, build up a library of stuff so you can be helpful to clients. You're not just providing a one angle service. You're Because people are lazy, Joe. I mean, there's clients, they ask you to do one thing and they say, oh, by the way, do you know any good caterers, or do you know any good this, that, or the other? And if you've got a library of those things, you can start sort of becoming an entertainment business just from your own knowledge that you've built up. So you're always on the lookout how to improve that and make life easy for your client, make yourself more saleable, apart from just the talent that you have, whatever that might be.
Hmm. Definitely, definitely. What are you most proud of in your career?
Ooh. Um, The thing I have to tell you, the thing I enjoy the most is when you've got some. I'm doing a session with students, and there's a young student who's a little bit frightened, say, and
You said
quite
this to me
often,
before, actually.
yeah, yeah. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
You'll have a mixed age group because the music teacher in a certain school might say, oh, we're just going to take talented kids from right across. But if you've got like a 12-year-old girl and a 17-year-old, A-level boy student, the girl is absolutely terrified. This kid, like a 17-year-old to a 12-year-old, is I mean, it's completely other beast, isn't it? So this is where they're really nervous to do anything and they don't want to play. And your job is to calm them down and then sort of try and build up a bit of confidence and get them to forget that they're in front of their peers and stuff. And if you can engender a bit of confidence in them and they come up with something and they're just amazed at what they've done, and that's a brilliant feeling. So having done that for a few students, I'm really proud of, much more than playing sort of snazzy venues or doing TV shows now. Although that's great. I mean, don't get me wrong. I am proud that I played the Albert Hall. I'm proud that I held down a 5-year TV residency. That stuff is great. But the stuff that really enriches me is that sort of seeing a kid just kind of opening up their eyes and their world to stuff that they didn't know they had in them. That's the most satisfying. Sorry, long answer again.
No, that's what we're here for. What do you have any big success stories of kids who you've tutored and they've gone on to do amazing things?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few. There's a lad called, I don't know if I should mention specific names, but he's doing very well. So there's a lad called Julian Jackson that was one of my earliest pupils, and then went on to have a sort of career as a jazz pianist, and he's doing very well now. And quite a few of this, what's really nice. About 10 years after I was sort of doing this thing with students, then I'd get phone calls from can you come and play at our wedding, or can you do a party for our parents, or we've got a local thing, So they start to book you, which is really nice when you get a second generation of people booking you from something. So it obviously means they remember you and it means something to them. Yeah, so all of that. I mean, that's if I could fill my year with that rather than being on the road all the time. And I think I did 65 flights last year, and I just flew in this morning from San Martin in the Caribbean from doing some shows on a ship. And it's great. It's it sounds very glamorous, but it's a lot of long haul economy. It's not quite as glamorous as it sounds. But I would rather be at home doing that with the students. But it's just kind of, if I devoted all my focus to that, I'd miss the other stuff. I'd miss the radio stuff. I'd miss the private parties. I'd miss playing at festivals. So it's like I said at the beginning, it's keeping all those things in balance.
Yeah. And with that balance, given where you're at in your career,
Yeah.
what would you like the next 10 years to look like?
Wow. I would like to get. I did a concert recently at the Oxford Union, which was quite a big deal because it's like a world's most famous debating forum. They say. I mean, it was probably written by someone from Oxford, so I'm sure there are other debating forums. But they're 200 years old, and they've had everyone. They've had Einstein, Obama, Malcolm X, Dalai Lama, everyone you can think of has spoken in this chamber, and it's the Oxford students, so it's all the next generation of whatever, politicians and movers and shakers. But it was the first time they'd had a piano recital there, so I was really, really proud to do that. And what I would like to do is and it's actually that's done really well. It's got over 100,000 views, which I know is not it's not kind of influencer millions territory, but it's still quite a lot of people for watching a 1 hour piano concert with me telling stories and taking requests to play stuff in different styles. So what I would like to do, especially with this Classic FM thing coming up, and they have an enormous reach. I think they have like 11 million TikTok subscribers or something, because it's a very popular radio station. I'd like to get not for the sense of fame, but I'd like to get a wider audience to see what I'm doing, of like this unusual thing of being able to take tunes and play them in different styles. And it's also to entertain people, to amuse people. I've got some old cabaret heroes that none of your audience will ever have heard of, people like Dudley Moore and Victor Borge, who are just known as sort of brilliant entertainers, and they could just make people laugh with the piano, the music, without even saying words. It was just inherently funny. And I'd like to get that side of what I do, which I think is my USP. I'd like to get that out to as broad an audience as possible. Also kind of just try and pass some of that on, and the joy of it, and what a brilliant career music can be, to the students that I'm teaching. So that's, those goals endlessly, they're always going to be there. I always want to do more of them. And as long as I love it and I'm enjoying it, I'm never going to stop. So no retirement for this, man. I'm not planning, time on a yacht. I have enough of that as it is.
I think that's the thing, and why you and I have always resonated, and what I've always admired about you is, every time I've spoken to you, you've always seemed invigorated about your profession, your job, your passion. And it's so different to a lot of people who work in the city, where you can just tell they're miserable. Every time I speak to you, generally it seems as though you're looking at the future. You've got something to look forward to. And I think that's something I've tried to engineer in my life, is having something within the next 2 to 3 months that I can look forward to, that I can kind of use as I wouldn't call it a North Star, but just something that I can work towards, sprint there, and say, okay, great. That was a nice little push that I could work towards. And now I'm trying something new. And it might not even be new. It might just be the next evolution of that thing that I've just caught or captured, or tried to capture, because I felt at times.
Yep. No, it is good. You have to have those goals, don't you? And actually, my wife is a very successful lawyer, and she's forever sort of saying to me, like, "What's your 5-year plan? What's your 10-year plan? What are you working towards? How are you expanding that?" So I do have a driving force behind me, because these musicians can be inherently lazy with this kind of unusual lifestyle of nobody's regulating your hours. But yeah, I mean, it's what you're saying is great. I mean, it's like if you're enthused by something and you're working towards it, that's, if you're enjoying what you do, which is, you're right. And you say, like, some people are sort of, it's a means to an end, just making money. It's I mean, what are you making that money for? Are you just sort of throwing away all that, the 30-year career, just so that you can eventually retire? And who knows how long you're going to have in that happy retirement. You've got to enjoy the journey. So you're absolutely right in, like, making these little goals and things that you're working towards. I mean, I know it's all a bit happy clappy, wonderful, but I think it is good to focus on those things, like, why am I doing what I'm doing? And if you are in something it's that you hate, and there's nothing, it's just means to an end. I mean, it's easy to say, isn't it? Like, think about sort of changing the way you work or changing the direction of your work, but it occasionally it's worth stepping back and saying, is this what I want to be doing in 10 years time, and do I want another 10 years of this misery? And are there any opportunities to go? So it's always courageous, isn't it? I've worked for a lot of very rich people, because I'm quite a luxury purchase. If you're having a party and you're going to book me, it's a quite a big fee. So there tends to be people with a few quid, and you hear their stories, you sit down and you get to know them, and what almost all of them have in common, Joe, is that they're all doing, like, moderately well to very well, and then at some point in their career, the really kind of successful ones put everything on red or black, really took a big risk with the capital that they'd accrued and threw it all into something new. And that's, I suppose, if you fail, you never hear of them again, but if you succeed, that's what I mean, that those people are taking chances and are kind of like going in new directions and trying to work out what they want to do and investing in that and taking a risk. It's not for everybody, but yeah. Yeah, I mean, sorry, I'm rambling a bit now, but you get my point. It's like it is good to step back from that and kind of think, what goal do I want to be doing? Something that makes me happy, not just earning money. It's just starting to sound like a Radio 4 thought for the day, so forgive me.
I like delving into these sort of rabbit holes because,
Mm.
so I think you touched upon something there, and you kind of have you have good proximity to a lot of successful and affluent people there.
Yeah.
From those people there, they're looking at, okay, we've got to this level. You mentioned red or black. Why
Yeah.
do you think they've got to that mindset of saying, you know, we've done well, but we know to get to this next level, we need to go all in? And as you said, some people just fade into obscurity. Others, like
Yeah,
they
I mean,
become.
if you put it on black and it comes up red, obscurity beckons, doesn't it? Why? I don't know. I mean, I think it's just. I think it's kind of inherent in the really successful people that they do embrace a bit of risk. You know, that's what makes them as successful as they are. You know, if you're just going on the kind of slow and steady bets, you know, your each ways first four places, you know, it's you're going to rise to a certain level. But if you're really going to do something, unless you have some kind of earth-shattering idea that just takes the planet by storm. But even people like my agent, he's still effectively my agent, but he's got an agency that other people look after me now. But he's the guy that invented what three words. And it's a brilliant. I mean, I don't know if you know about that. The location services. So
No,
they had this
what is it?
idea of they divided the planet into 12 trillion squares of like 1 yard, and they gave each square like three words. And so now it's a location service that's being used by medical services and loads of countries for postal
I've heard of
services.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's lots of that. All the more and more uses, and now it's kind of like a yeah, I mean, it's like hundreds of millions-pound worth company. But like he sort of like he was doing quite well with his music agency, and then they had this idea, and it's the sort of idea. I mean, not you're in the pub and you come up with something and you get excited about it, and then you think, oh, but then like, could I really follow it through? Would I invest in it? Would I do all the marketing? Have I got like months and months to spend on this idea? What hiking it around, trying to get the investment capital, all of this. It's a big deal, isn't it, to get even a
Mm.
very good idea off the ground? It involves a lot of work and a lot of time, and in some ways that's the risk, isn't it? You know, people think, oh, all this sort of time and money and investment. At the end, I might have nothing. If you're thinking like that, then it's probably never going to happen. But he did it. He spent like thousands of hours of getting seed funding and actually going through the entire Oxford Dictionary, taking out all the rude words and the plurals and everything that would like mess up the idea. And now, of course, it works in a million languages, Chinese and I think Mongolia use it for their official postal service, and it's Jaguar and Aston Martin use it on their sat nav. So I mean, it's just gone completely global. This. But because he took the risk of putting all that, taking one successful business and putting it to the side, and then putting all this time and effort in, that's what I sort of mean by red or black. You know, he could have like his other business could have completely gone to seed, but he believed in this idea and really saw it through, and now it's reaping fantastic benefits. So I suppose in a nutshell, that's a good example of what I'm talking about. Kind of standing back and saying, what do I want to do, and and believing in whatever that might be to kind of invest your time and effort into it. Yeah, it's a
One
very
of the best
basic
quotes.
sentiment. Go on.
One of the best quotes I ever heard, and I'm paraphrasing now, but it's from Warren Buffett. He essentially said it's more important to decide what boat you choose to jump into as opposed to just jumping in a boat. And he was just talking about getting to a destination. And I
Right.
think where a lot of people my age I see go wrong is they choose the wrong vehicle. They choose a business model or a career where they're going to be pigeonholed, and they might have aspirations, just as an example, to earn 250 grand per year, but because they're just in the wrong vehicle, they can only earn 50, 100k, and there's a mismatch between the goals and what they're actually doing. You know for a fact that you're not going to be able to swim around the world, whereas you could sail around the world, and that's just choosing the right vehicle. And that's where I think a lot of people look at
Yeah.
what they're doing is, with a certain thing you're doing, you can only get to a certain level in most cases. But if you look at something else, then you might have more leverage.
Yeah, that's true. But and also enjoying the vehicle that you choose to go. That's don't sort of write off. Oh, I need to get to this level before I can invest in that. You've got to enjoy the process of getting to that level first of all. You've got to enjoy actually what what you're doing. Or I mean, I know this. I know people will be saying like, yeah, it's all very well for you to say you're a creative, you're in the arts, you enjoy it. Most of us don't have like 4 or 5 viable paid options. We've just got to take whatever we can.
Yeah.
And of course I understand that, but I think it's just like while you're doing the necessary, just always being open to sort of think of ways that you can take the skills you're accruing and the transferable skills into something that kind of motivates you and drives you, and you're just going to be a happier person, and happier people tend to be more successful. I mean, I'm never going to be a billionaire as a musician, I'm not, and it's only like the kind of 0.0001% of pop stars or
Hmm.
whoever that are ever going to do that. But I do look at a lot of these super rich people, and I just think I wouldn't swap my life with you for I can't think anything. Not your life would certainly not make me happier. That's what I'm trying to say. I've got great groups of mates, like our group of mates that we play football with. I travel the world doing something I love. I mean, this doesn't get any better than that, Joe. Happy relationship. I mean, it all sounds really smug, doesn't it? But it's not. It's not like that. I'm not driven by earning £1 billion, but I do have a very happy life. And ultimately, what's the point? Why are you trying to accrue this money? To have a happy life. We're really getting philosophical now, mate. You better drag me back to the business side of things, I think.
No, the podcast goes in whatever way we want it to go, and I think that's probably. I guess it's to an extent the conversation you'd have down the pub after football. It's the real conversation. It's just thinking that the camera is off and nothing's being recorded. So
Yeah.
go in whatever direction you want. A question to you, and I don't know if you've been asked this before. If you weren't a musician, a pianist, what do you think you'd be doing?
Um, I mean, the only other thing that I really enjoy is writing. I did have a little side hustle for a while. My dad was really into cryptic crosswords, and he got me into it when I was a kid. And I sort of read a few books on that, and worked out how to set these, sort of complicated wordplay crosswords, and I sold a few to magazines. That was quite enjoyable. I mean, it's just you never earn more than a sort of few £100 doing it, but I really enjoyed it. And more and more, just I've been writing sort of quite extensive travel blogs, which I've got about 150,000 words of them now, and they're trying to be sort of humorously and telling tales, because there's some sort of quite weird stuff happens when you're on the road like that, and some of the people you meet and the celebrities and that. So I will at some point when I stop working on ships, I'll publish that. Probably not before I stop working on ships, because some of it's going to be quite fruity, and I'll probably get kicked off. But there's
How are you going to publish it?
yeah, I'll publish it at some point. Yeah, probably just
As a book,
self-publish.
or
Yeah,
how will
just
you do it?
as a book. Yeah. It's kind of it's all ready. It needs a bit of editing, but it's kind of ready to go. So and it's people. I sort of throw these things out there on platforms like Facebook and blogging platforms, and people say, "Oh, they're really funny and they're really entertaining." So we'll see. We'll see if we can. It's just going to be a vanity project. I'll sell. If I sell more than 1,000 copies, I'll be very happy, Joe. Put it that way. So yeah, some
Just
sort of
put your
writing
signature in
everything
there, and
too.
that's it.
Huh?
Just place your signature in there, and they'll fly off the shelf.
Yeah. Whatever. I'm not sure about that.
Just get your finger. That's it.
Yeah.
Put your fingerprints. So Harry, I've got a question for you,
Yeah.
and this is uh, part of the podcast where we get questions from the internet. And it reads from a fellow entrepreneur asked, "How do you go about getting booked for events and venues?" And this is what you do today as a brand new pianist, musician. Not you've got all of your experience, you've got your name, your reputation.
Yeah. So you mean you're starting at the beginning when you're setting out?
Yeah,
Okay. Well, there's a yeah. First of all, you've got to identify what sort of gigs you want to do. Are you a rock band? Are you a classical musician? Do you a good sight reader? Are you an improviser? So you've got to identify what your skill set is first of all, what you're going for. I mean, there's the kind of bog standard things you go and you do open auditions for agents and things, or you go to wedding fairs. So you have a band that plays at weddings. You go and play at this wedding fair, and lots of people come, and agents come and listen if they think you're good. And if you want to work in something like, if you're a good sight reader, there's options like, you could be a session musician, and that really just involves trying to get to know other session musicians, taking lessons from people that are kind of well advanced in the business and trying to get a network so you get your name around, and then doing what we call depping, which is sitting in for somebody when they're sick or they're doing another gig, taking their place. That's something you build up. There's a good example I often do. People say, somebody said to me they wanted to get into playing in theatre. Said, I'm a really good sight reader. I can read anything that's put in front of me, and I'm good technique on my instrument. And I'd love to play in the pits in West End shows. Right? And he said, I said, oh, what are you going to do? He said, I'm going to send my CV off to Cameron McIntosh, who's like the biggest West End producer. And, you don't want to kind of deflate somebody like that who's full of optimism and does have talent and skill. But you also have to give them a dose of realism. So I say, like, you realise, like, Cameron McIntosh has like hundreds of people working for him, and your CV will never get within, kind of like 200 people of the final goal. And his face fell a bit. And he said, well, how do you get into it then? And this is stuff that you would never think of this, but the reality of how that whole scene works is, if you want to get into playing for a West End show, the tried and trusted route is what you do. You pick a theatre where there's a show on, like Hamilton or something in Victoria. You find the nearest pub, and sit in there about 8:30. And about 8:30, 20 people in black shirts and black trousers who are the band basically for the show will come in to have a pint in the interval. That was sort of like a tried and trusted musical theatre tradition. And you identify whoever it is that's playing your instrument, drums, trumpet, what synthesizer, whatever it might be, and you go and just say, hi, sorry to disturb you, but I wondered if you give lessons. And all musicians will give lessons at some point, especially if somebody's good and keen. So you kind of you set up a situation where you're then working for the person who's doing that show, and that person's probably doing the same show every night, and after 6 months of it gets a bit bored, and or gets a gig at the Albert Hall, or gets asked to go on tour with somebody, and that's when they're looking to put in a reliable dep. And the first person they're going to put in is their students, and that's how it works getting into the West End. But you would never know that when you're starting out unless somebody tells you. These kind of backdoor alleys and these kind of old, strange, quirky routes of getting into things. So to answer your question, yes, sort of two things: work out exactly the type of gig you want to do. Don't just vaguely say, oh, I want to play music. Are you a rock band? Are you a jazz band? Are you a classical musician? Are you a reader? Are you a theatre player? Are you a session player who really does have amazing sight reading and go in, meet other musicians, go to open jams, go to open auditions, and in the meantime, try and take on some younger students of your own. Do teaching as kind of an early way of earning money, and getting gigs in playing in bars and playing in hotels and stuff like that. That's the route I took, and it's still sort of viable for young musicians, although the competition is intense.
What you said there, the reason why I paused is because I actually recorded a video the other day that sort of harped on about what you mentioned there. And I
Okay.
think in today's society, I think people are always looking to become efficient, becoming effective. So they're always looking essentially hacking. They're thinking, to what you said, oh, how can I scale what I'm doing? How can I speak to as many people as quickly as possible? But
Yeah.
I really think the methods that you choose that are unscalable. So, for instance, someone could not go to 10 different pubs in one evening and do that because it's just physically impossible with their time. But if they said
Right.
3 times a week, we're going to go to a pub, and exactly what you said, they might go to the Strand, Victoria, figure out the
Yeah.
locations where they can be, and then do it
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And I think where a lot of people, when they're starting their business, they miss out is they look at this dream or this goal,
Yeah.
and they want to just figure out the most efficient route,
Yeah.
and they'll face the deflation because the likelihood is you're going to be unsuccessful. You're not going to get through
A lot of
to
the time.
the
Yeah.
big
You've got to
dogs.
keep at it. Yeah. Absolutely.
And it's trying to, as you said, find those backdoor methods. And
Yes.
when I was shooting this video, I actually listed down where my first 12 clients came from, and you were one of them when we were working together back in 2019.
Yeah.
And everything that you read online as a young person now, it's you can build these marketing systems and funnels online, and you can be based here and you can start working with clients in LA tomorrow. When in reality, probably the best method to do is to go around to your local coffee shop, and I don't know, if you're a marketeer, just say to them, hey, can I just do some marketing for you? Or if you're a pianist, go down to the local restaurant
Absolutely.
that
Yeah.
you've
Yeah.
noticed there's a piano and just said, hey, can I just turn around and perform for half an hour? And that's the unsexy stuff that I think, in my opinion, a lot of young people try to avoid. They see all of these fancy things on YouTube. They follow a few videos and hear of
Yes.
this 0.1% outlier who's uber
Yes. Yes.
successful and just think, oh,
Yes.
well,
Yes.
it's worked for this
Yes.
guy.
Yeah.
It should work for me.
Yeah, that those points are all very valid, Joe. But I would also call. I mean, there is the
Yeah.
unsexy stuff. The stuff you're putting yourself about and getting a name out there. Yes, yes, of course. But you have to be very careful with how you apportion that, because there's a lot of people out there that was, even now, with like quite substantial, even reputation, professional musicians. They will say, like, come and play in our venue. There's no money, but it's great exposure. It's like a joke amongst musicians that people say that, and it's really out of order. They're not valuing what you're doing. And it's, if you're choosing something, if you're doing it on your terms, saying I will come and do like a 40-minute showcase or something for you, and invite some people to come and hear me at your restaurant. So it's good for the restaurateur. He's getting free music, or she is getting free music, and you're getting some extra customers. That's great, and you're doing it on your terms. But don't have a little bit of regard for what you're doing as well. Don't give too much away for free. Be aware of that, because there's a lot of people there. If you set a precedent early on, they'll have you doing. There's loads of journalists writing for free just to get exposure in a paper. Or Ian Hislop, for the editor of Private Eye, is a guy on Have I Got News for You? He's really strong on this stuff. He says he will not take on journalists for free. He will always pay them, because journalism is hard and it takes time, and you need to get your sources and you need to travel, and there's loads of expenses. So good journalism costs, and it should be paid for. That idea of, like, you can just get on with exposure doesn't pay the bills, as you and I well know. So yes, I mean, be prepared to do some foot slogging and going around and having a little bit of failure, and maybe doing the odd free thing, but have a strategy with that. Don't just kind of like splay it out there and just yeah, I'll do it for the exposure. That's if you're doing something for free, it's very hard to garner respect for doing that. You've got to have a value on what you're actually offering. I think that's really important to think about.
I think, to what you said, and I've done several pieces of work for free or below market rate of what I think I'm worth.
Yeah.
I think if you've got zero experience, working for free is okay, but it's knowing where you're going to draw that line mentally. If
Yes.
you're doing it because you've got nothing in your portfolio or nothing on your CV, then
Yes. Yes.
yeah, it makes sense. But I had a
Yes.
guy work for me back in 2021, and he stayed with me for 2 years. When he came in, he asked and he said, I'll work for free. And I said, no, you know what? Business is okay. I'll bring you in, train you up. And one of the best decisions I ever made. He was a
Good.
real grafter, a real hard worker, and he's on to do his own thing now, which is amazing. But for me, I thought it's so I could see a little bit of me in him, and I thought he's here, he's trying to make it.
Yeah.
He hasn't got much money in his back
Yeah. Yeah.
pocket, so me
Yes.
giving him even £500 a month, that's
Yeah.
going to help him cover his bills,
That's
cover a few
brilliant,
little
Joe. That's
costs.
absolutely brilliant. Yeah, hats off to you, mate.
Thank
It's
you.
a good
And
feeling as well, isn't it? It's a really good feeling to see somebody go on and fly from what you've taught them.
yeah, definitely.
It's a really
And
nice
it's,
feeling, yeah.
I guess I'm a few decades behind you with regards to how much you've helped people out. But it is nice and I got recognised at an event last month,
Yes.
and it was really humbling. And I've never met the guy once in my life.
Right.
He follows me on Instagram. He said, "Oh, hey, I've been following you." We had a conversation, and I registered straight away that we had a conversation. And he just said
Yeah.
that he's done a few cool things, and I just thought that, for me, similar to what you were saying about you helping kids, or I guess probably the biggest token is the fact that students of yours, when they say, "Hey, can you play at our wedding, or can you play for our
Yeah,
parents?"
that's
You
lovely.
think
I mean,
they
it's so,
really,
like you say,
really,
it's humbling, flattering, and those words are overused, but it is. It is. It's like, it's a
yeah,
privilege, isn't it? Yeah. They remember you, and they want you at a really significant moment of their life. It's a very nice thing. Yeah.
that's it. Harry, it's been a pleasure talking, and I'm sure I'm going to see you very, very
Likewise.
soon. Where
Yes.
can people find you?
So, I mean, Instagram, Harry the Piano. That's a sort of an easy go-to. I have two Facebook pages. One is Harry the Piano, which is like all the music stuff that I'm doing. I do have a personal one as well, but there's a bit of politics and swearing on that, so I'm not going to hand that out to you. Joe, you were going to ask me about books, by the way, just in case you wanted. Is that's a regular feature on your podcast, or is the time gone for that?
You're right. So we'll keep it broad to your question. What are your top 3 book recommendations of all time, any genre?
Oh, Well, so I've actually the one that came to mind was just reading biographies of people that you really admire and how they went about it. There's a musician called Andre Previn who is like a brilliant classical pianist, but he's also plays proper jazz, and that's incredibly rare to find somebody with those two skills because they're usually poles apart. It's like speaking completely different language, and almost nobody can do both of them. And just reading his biography and like how he seized his opportunities. And one of the things, so I'm not sure that I'll be able to muster through. Well, there's A Kind of Blue, which is a sort of a biography of Miles Davis as well. One of the things I realised reading these books, just really quickly, Joe, at the end, is that, and this is what if I could go back and talk to my 12-year-old self, this is what I would say, like, it's these new sort of things where you can see people who are highly skilled at what they're doing, and you're too terrified to jump in and sort of say, can I sit in and can I do something, or can I have a go at this, or somebody asks you to do something, go, oh no, I could never do that. I would say, like, trust yourself a bit more and throw yourself in there, because if your motivation is good and you're humble and you're really doing it and you want to learn and you want to take advice, then almost all creators will respond to that. If you're just a sort of kid who wants to show off, that's a different thing. But if you're going in with the right spirit that you want to do that, and trust, don't be frightened of putting yourself out there, because there are so many charlatans out there on YouTube and stuff offering piano lessons and stuff and they're awful. And the standard is woeful. So like, if you've got some talent and you're going in there with a real desire to learn and a real to learn from your elders and the people who are more experienced than that, and you just want to put yourself out there, most people will respond to that and say, good for you. It is, the creatives are usually sort of quite friendly people, I found. And it's not hard and fast, but generally it's quite a nice industry to be in, certainly from a musician's point of view, mostly. So yeah, throw yourself into things. Don't think, oh, I can't do it, I could never do that. Try, and even if you kind of fall on your ass, it's still great experience. So that sort of answers the book question and the 12-year-old advice question. So I'll shut up now, Joe.
Harry, thank you so much.
Cheers,
Pleasure.
buddy. Lovely talking to you as always. Ta-ra, mate.
Take care.